Hello everyone, and welcome back to Creation Myths. Today we have a creationist behaving badly. This one is going to be about Ken Ham, and I like to keep it light on this channel, but this is just going to be more of a serious one. Later on in this video, I'm going to talk about someone whom I have had direct interactions with. I've had nothing but personal interactions with them. But I think the point that I want to convey in this video is really important to get across, so I'm just going to do it. So today we are talking about Ken Ham, the founder and CEO of Answers in Genesis. AIG is the largest young earth ministry. They very famously have, the Creation Museum and the Ark Park. That's Answers in Genesis. But today we are not talking about the young earth ministry side of AIG directly. Instead, we are going to talk about the culture war side of AIG, because lately, and I think very much due to the influence of Ken Ham and the direction of Ken Ham, AIG is going all in on culture war stuff. And you could see this most directly by looking at their YouTube channel. So here's just a representative sample from the last 6 months or so. So we've got Black Lives Matter, we've got public schools and how scary they are, we've got transphobia, which is a major theme across AIG recently, and we have, for good measure, just a little bit of demonizing Disney, because gotta watch out for Mickey Mouse, right? And I also want to point out the reach of these videos. The more recent ones are in the tens of thousands of views. The older ones, 4 months and 6 months ago, are in the hundreds of thousands. So this is kind of something that AIG has been doing more recently. They've really been leaning into the culture war stuff. And the big idea is that everything contrary to AIG is a threat. And we don't just mean that in terms of the science. We also mean that culturally, things that are contrary to AIG is a threat to AIG's mission. And really interestingly, this also includes the wrong flavor of young earth creationists. And that brings us to a recent series, recent as of March 2023, as I record this, on the Answers in Genesis website. This is the Young Earth Evolution series, which started in January of 2023. So this is a series that looks at basically the wrong kind of young earth creationists and explains to the AIG audience why they are a threat. Basically, this series makes a slippery slope kind of argument that if you accept some evolution, if you open that door just a little bit, then you're inevitably going to just tumble down the slope and accept all of it. Now, that is neither here nor there for what we're talking about today. For what it's worth, I think Ham actually has a point on that one, because the processes for so-called microevolution and macroevolution are the same. It's just a difference in time. So I think once you accept a little bit, there's no reason to not accept evolutionary theory whole hog, but that's neither here nor there for what we're talking about today. What I want to focus on today is not the content of this series. I want to talk about the authorship of this series, because none of these pieces have an author on them, but they seem to be primarily the work of one prolific AIG contributor. Now, the first piece in this series actually had an author on it when it was first published, but very short order that was removed, and this editor's note was appended to that piece. It reads, "This article was mistakenly attributed to a single author upon initial publication. It is, however, a ministry statement and not the work of any single individual, as will be this entire series. We apologize for any confusion this may have caused." Now, thanks to the wonders of the Internet Archive, we know who that author was, and I have a screenshot of it. So if you go, to the Wayback Machine, you could actually see the original version of this with the author on it, and the author is Harry F. Sanders III. So let's talk about Harry F. Sanders III a little bit. He's an author/contributor for Answers in Genesis. He's written over 70 articles. If you click on his name, it'll take you to a page where all of his articles are listed, and you can just scroll down and down and down, and you get over 70 articles once you get to the bottom. His focus tends to be on biology, genetics, and baraminology, which is the kind of study of created kinds. Where do we draw those lines? Now, really interesting point about Harry F. Sanders III is that there is no information on the AIG website about this person. He doesn't have a bio page. And you go to the bios, there's a big long list of people, all the contributors that have bios. But if you go to that page and you look between Dr. Jennifer Hall Rivera and Calvin Smith, that's where Harry F. Sanders should be, but he's not there, which is really weird. But the thing is, we can still know things about this person, Harry F. Sanders III, because we can be very sure that Sanders is another online young earth creationist that you may have encountered. Now, before we get into this other person, I want to make clear my understanding for a long time has been that Harry F. Sanders is a pseudonym. I remember hearing that somewhere. That has been my understanding. And I'm certain that this other name is also a pseudonym, and that name is Emory Moynagh. So Harry F. Sanders III and Emory Moynagh are the same person. I am now convinced that that is the case. So Emory Moynagh is a writer and YouTuber, although his YouTube channel doesn't exist anymore. He's also a biology student, and as I understand it, he relatively recently, as of this recording, earned a master's degree. So he has the In His Image blog, and formerly the In His Image YouTube channel. It doesn't exist anymore, but you can still find his channel and all of his videos on Rumble if you want to find them. Now, the really interesting thing in terms of the identities here is that you can find virtually identical articles on the IHI blog by Moynagh and on AIG by Sanders. And here is a representative example. The blog post is called Polyploidy and the Genome. That's from In His Image. And the AIG article is called Is Plant Polyploidy a Viable Mechanism for Evolution? If you go through these pieces, you can go paragraph by paragraph and see that they are almost word for word identical. As I show you these on screen, feel free to pause the video and read through and look at the highlighting. They are basically exactly the same. Here's another section where they even share a heading, right? You've got polyploid speciation, and you go through and you'll see they're the same. They each have references, and if you click on those references, you'll find that the references are the same references in the same places. These are the same article, written by the same person, published in two different places under two different names. But it's very clearly the same thing by the same author. Now, the important thing here, again, it's not the content of those pieces. It's the other stuff that Emory Moynagh writes about and publishes in videos that matters for us here right now. Because in his videos in particular, he walks right up to the line of inciting violence. He invokes anti-Semitic tropes. He trades in conspiracy theories, anti-vax and others. Some of the conspiracy theories are related to the anti-Semitic tropes. I'm not going to quote any of his stuff directly, but if you want examples of it, you can go to the Rumble channel I mentioned and look at the video Where Are the Men? And Francis Collins is Evil. Those are two representative examples of the kinds of things I'm talking about, the kind of extremist rhetoric and language that Emory employs. Well, what does this have to do with Ken Ham? Well, with the Young Earth Evolution series, AIG is centering Harry/Emory. I think what's happening is Ken Ham is trying to have it both ways. He's trying to be respectable and claw back support from the other Young Earth ministries, while at the same time dog whistling to the more extreme parts of the right wing, including people who might buy the dog whistle messages, the culture war messages, but aren't yet, in his eyes, on board with the theology. I think that's what's going on here. And, the thing is, people say stuff on the internet. You can go on the internet and find lots of bad opinions. Spend 2 minutes on Twitter. It's not hard to find bad opinions. You could even find plenty of dangerous opinions and ideas online. Again, not hard to find. The thing is, most of these opinions, most of these ideas, most people making content on the internet have a very small audience. What they're putting out there doesn't reach very many people. But what Ken Ham has done here is given an extremist an enormous audience. And it's not the case that, the more extreme things that I mentioned, the borderline calls for violence, right, the fairly overt anti-Semitism, That stuff doesn't make it into the AIG articles under the authorship of Harry F. Sanders III. But I think there's enough kind of reading between the lines in there that you could do to lead people to the more extreme content. And that's the problem here. Fortunately, silver lining, I think this is ultimately counterproductive. Maybe I'm just being hopeful and I'm hoping that this is counterproductive, but I really do think that this is a bad strategy in the long term. AIG is first and foremost a ministry, right? The mission is to attract more followers. But Ken Ham, for quite a while now, has been basically anti-big tent, right? He's, kind of had this my way or the highway approach. We're the only ones doing this right. And with this Young Earth Evolution series, he's really taken that to a new level in terms of going after people who, by all rights, should really be on the same side as him. He should really count them as allies rather than enemies. But that's not what he's doing. And I think this bringing in Harry/Emory is more of the same. This association signals who is and who isn't welcome in the AIG tent. And what we're seeing is that it is narrower and more extreme than you would think is good strategy for an organization that is, in theory, trying to attract a wider and broader following. But I think what's going to happen here is that by giving Harry/Emory a larger audience, the extremism in both the substance of his message and, if you watch his videos, in the style, will likely turn off more people than it attracts. Again, maybe I'm being hopeful and naive, but I think that is likely to be the long-term case here. So in conclusion, Ken Ham is going all in on the culture war, and he's decided to go all in against other Young Earth creationists, the so-called Young Earth Evolutionists, as AIG calls them. To do this, he's enlisted Harry F. Sanders III/Emory Moynagh as the primary author of this series. Harry/Emory has a history of taking extreme positions, including borderline incitements of violence, anti-Semitism, and conspiracy theories. To be completely blunt about it, this is dangerous and irresponsible, especially considering Ham and AIG's recent aggression towards the LGBT+ community and the trend of right-wing violence. You couple those things with the scope of AIG's audience, which is enormous compared to Emory Moynagh's blog and YouTube and Rumble channel, and even compared to the other Young Earth ministries. It's an enormous audience. You take this message and you blast it out to some of those videos that had hundreds of thousands of views, and the extremism in Harry/Emory's work will ultimately reach more people. And the big thing for me here, thinking about Ken Ham and all of this, is that I can't say whether or not that might be the point. So that's why I feel like I want to get this message out there. So, as I said at the top, I think this is one of the more important videos I've done, even though it's not directly related to the science of Young Earth creationism. I think this message is important. I think these developments are dangerous, and this needs to get out there. So, please hit like, leave a comment, share this video, and if you're not already, please subscribe to this channel. Thank you for watching, and don't get fooled.